Loom is the first game from State of Play that they then made Luminous City that won the BAFTA. And whenever I play that game, that game is it's handmade. You know, they made um, all the things are physical things, the objects that you interact with, and the little house, and that was really similar to what I saw in animation. Right? It's like it's what stop motion animation is, and I think that there was when I was like, okay, I could make games, you know, even though I only made that decision more forward in time. I think that was the time when I decided that I would like to make games. That was the game that made that for me, and so and it's a game of an hour to play.
Welcome, everyone, to a new episode of the Zero to Play podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Jennings, and today I'm joined by Mafalda Duarte. Mafalda is the managing director and producer at Nerd Monkeys Games, the founder of the game developer collective Game Dev Lisbon, and the ambassador coordinator of the not for profit organization Women in Games. Today, we'll be talking about Mafalda's journey of breaking into the industry and learning how to direct a game studio, the challenges of organizing game developer centric events and communities, how her love for art may have helped pave the way for her current career in production, the importance of short games, and much more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of the Zero to Play podcast. Welcome, Mafalda. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Welcome, Jonathan, for the invitation, and I'm super excited to be here today. So let's go.
Let's do it. I love it. I love it. I usually when guests come on, I like to do a little bit of background research and like looking you up. It definitely seems like community in general seems really important to you, and you've done a lot of work in kind of fostering communities. And so, with that said, I'd love to know like what does community mean to you, and in your
Mhm.
ideal world, what sort of game developer communities would you like to build?
Yeah, so I think community means a lot to me because I know what it is to not have anyone around that looks like you, that have the same goals and objectives, and you probably can relate to, especially when you are an artistic person. Sometimes you only find your crew whenever whenever I reach fine arts college. I was like, okay, now I have people that look like me and want to do the same things. But then whenever I found the crew for Eldoteca, the first collective I was involved in, I was like, oh no, these are the people that are look really like, and it's so you get more and more inspired by them as whenever you connect deeply with people around you. So I think that community means to have some people to inspire you and to pass the way with you towards betterment for all. Because I think if you are in this path that I'm in and you like to organize events and bring people together, you cannot do it for you, you know. Of course there's like some personal gain that you have. The personal gain is like now you have people now, maybe you are a little bit more outspoken and things like that, but at the same time it's like you need to be happy just by having people around you that are happy to have those places to go and to be at. And yeah, so I really enjoy to make other people feel the things that I feel whenever I'm in a community that I can relate with.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I guess what are some of the challenges of kind of building a community like that, right? Building a space where people can feel like they can
Mhm.
connect to each other and understand each other.
Well, the big one is non one person is the same, and people will have different goals. So you ask me what are the perfect community. So for me, it's just having access. I think access is one of the things that, especially if you come from a minority background, like you want that. You want to just be around and be connected. And so that is my first thing. But then there's a lot of people that are looking for the opposite. They are looking for, I don't know, more exclusive places, or they're looking for um just different ways to connect, or they like it more professional or more freeing, or so you will never um make everyone happy. And I think that's the real challenge, is like you need to be happy with that. It's just so Game Dev Lisbon is the community I want to make because it's on my own grounds. Like before, I helped other brands, other communities, other collectives grow, and I fit right in into that. But then I was like, okay, but if I want my own rules, I need to say, guys, it's super okay you're not comfortable here. I have this goal, these objectives, these values for this community, and tell me, like, do they match yours? Do they not? And of course, it's changeable. But it needs. I think it needs to have like. That's why I made it Game Dev Lisbon and tried to have it like from the local to the global. That
Mhm.
approach. I think that is my ideal community. Is like to have people around you in your local area making our local change, be open for everyone else can get in, but at the same time there's like this close and openness that need to be balanced, because you'll never make everyone happy if you want to be, everyone. If whenever there's a global community, every everything turns to shit. I'm
Right.
sorry. You can
I fully understand. It's a lot. It's a lot.
you can put a pin on it like, oh, Apollo, you shouldn't say bad words, I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. No worries. I'll mention it. I'll mention to the producer. It'll be a fine. Yeah. Awesome. Wow. And so I guess with that said, how I guess could you explain like Game Dev Lisbon and kind of what is a Game Dev Collective? Because I actually haven't heard of too many that in operation. So I'd love to hear more about Game Dev Collectives and kind of what Game Dev Lisbon does under that umbrella.
Yeah, so for example, I was in another collective called Ludoteca that it was started long before a few years back, with as that objective of like being open to everyone as well, and to connect well the entire country and try to do that. And I think, and I really relate to what they're trying to do, and I worked with them for a long time. But then at some point is like, um I missed the idea of a collective for the industry and not just for game devs. Because at some point in my path, especially whenever Out of Line came out and I was doing the touring, just like as a
Mhm.
producer, talking about the game everywhere and going to shows, uh, I got more and more connected to the journalists and the podcast hosts and everyone else that they feel outside of the industry. At least here in Portugal, there's a lot of that divide, and I'm like, yeah, but we all build what the game dev biz is.
Right.
And so that was the disconnect for me. It was like, okay, I want to do more and to open more to what it means to be in games. I think that probably relates also to women in games, because
Right.
um I don't want to jump right into that. But again, as whenever you try to be more and more inclusive, you also understand that inclusivity also means to value other areas within the business,
Right.
and not gatekeep what it means to be in games.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's super important. And I think, man, there's so many questions I'd love to follow up with that. I guess I'd love to hear like about what the game dev community in Portugal is like, right? Like I don't haven't heard much about the Portugal community, so I'd love to hear about you and what you enjoy about it and how you'd like to
Yeah,
see it grow and all that stuff.
I think to start with is just to understand that I'm not the first one by any
Mhm.
stretch of the imagination. I'm doing what I'm doing because there's other people that cultivate um, me into the industry. There are game dev groups created by like Filipina, Diogo Vasconcelos, there Wilson Almeida. There's a lot of people that started the first game jams, the first meetups, there are just a few. There's like so too many to count, but
Mhm.
people that start getting together um, to make things happen. Miguel Vicente also with Diogo Vasconcelos, they open up a game dev camp, which is our biggest conference that we have here. And so having other people making that open up a path for me, because whenever I was a student and whenever I was stepping up, that's what I did. I tried to be everywhere. Everywhere I
Right.
see, oh, there's a meetup here, there's an event there. Let me be close to these people. And so, what I think is just Game Dev Lisbon is trying to build up on the legacy of all those people before us, you know. And what I would say is that that community is small, but and and it made a lot of like internal issues sometimes. Again, just because of the different, I would say generational differences between what it means to be in games or whatnot. You know, differences of opinion, regional differences. You know, because it's really probably for you in the states, it's like it's so big that it's different, the way that the disconnect maybe happened between, I don't know, different states, right? States are like countries; they're so big. But in here, I
Mhm.
think there's a lot of regionalisms sometimes, and the way to combat that is again to reach out and to say it's okay. And I know it seems counterproducent to have like Game Dev Lisbon trying to combat regionalisms, you know. But for me, it's like if I try to be a change in my region, then I can empower someone else to do the same for theirs and be open to help out and to translate instead of trying to say, oh, I'm trying to do the thing for everyone, you know. And if
Yeah,
everyone wants to be in the industry or in the group, they need to be in my group.
you're
uh yeah, I'm okay with have a lot of mini groups. It's okay, guys, you can have
right.
mini groups is a great way to connect, you know. And it's a
Right.
great thing to also have a big one to go and say and figure out who else is around. So it's a hard balance.
Yeah. I could see that. I could see that, right? Trying to make sure like you're there for the community and you're supporting people and you're trying to do the work of connecting and kind of, helping put the Portugal game development community on the map, but not saying like, oh, we're not the only ones here. We're not the only ones trying to succeed and trying to hopefully bring up other regions. I could totally see that.
Yeah, and just one thing to build on that, I think it's game dev in general. I think it's a lot less competitive and more open than people think. I don't know if you have that opinion, but it's like being from arts before. It's like if you want to, I don't know. There's a lot of who's the, you need to be the artist, you know, the best one around, and a lot of that competitiveness that I think game dev is a lot more collaborative. You'll see everyone share their tips and tricks and be open for mentoring and things like that. And it's kind of easier to get in the industry, right? Because you can build your portfolio on game jams and on making your own little games and publish them online, and then you have something published. And so there's easier ways to put yourself out there and to connect with others. And again, it's so multi disciplinary that you need to collaborate and you need to be a good person to collaborate with.
Yeah.
uh yeah, and so i I just think that that's the spirit of the industry and the spirit of the communities, you know, that should be where we want to reach, or where we want to go.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's awesome. I totally get that. And man, I have so many questions. Like, the work you're doing, No More Monkeys, the fact I'm talking to a woman studio director. I know that has to have its own challenges and stuff. But I guess before we talk about a lot of stuff you're doing now and kind of, the leadership you're exhibiting now and stuff, I'd love to talk to you about like kind of how you got your start in the industry and like, where you started in the arts and all that stuff. Like, what was young, hungry Mafalda? Like, what brought you into games and all of that?
Yeah, so look, I wanted to be everything. Like growing up, I wanted to be an actress and like a play director and a cinematographer and you know and a cook and a painter. And I just I like to do a lot of things and
Mhm.
to always be involved. And but I always knew I wanted to be an artist. So I knew I wanted to go to fine arts, and so I only applied to every single course of fine arts my first way around.
Wow.
And my first choice was art multimedia because that one was the more versatile, I'll say. So in art multimedia, you can go to photography, performance arts, um, animation. That's the one I end up going. Audio visuals, and installation, something like that. Uh, so yeah, you had the first year that was equal for everyone, and then you'll pick your specialty. And yeah, so I had the best time. Uh, I had an amazing group of friends. We were always making things. It is very theoretical, so there's a lot of documentation that you do in fine arts. A lot of just like writing on I don't know, analyzing art and
Mhm.
things like that. So it's a lot less more practical than people will think. But I think that that made a path of have a lot of culture and a lot of connecting different things, different areas of expertise, and I really connect with that. So and so after college, the first job I got, it is like a professional internship. It's a program that we have here in Portugal, but it's actually a full time work for an entire year. With this children book publisher called La La Land, and I saw that they were doing children books. I wanted to be an illustrator, so I applied. The plot twist is they were looking for a programmer,
Oh boy.
and I never programmed a day in my life. But it was, but the thing is, it was, they were like, oh, but it's visual programming is with this plugin to Photoshop, and it's like you program directly in Photoshop. It was a
Mhm.
thing, and I'm like, yeah, sure, of course I can do this. Like, if you give me a little time to learn, I'll figure
Mhm.
it out. And so that's exactly what I did. I think I programmed 5 different apps for them, or uh,
Wow.
3 got launched. I end up being able to draw for some of them as well. So it was like just full process. So from eventually I did a book from start to finish. So just sketching, layouting, I don't know, correcting the text so it makes sense in an iPad format. Um, Text to speak to speech thing as well. So putting in the app store, it was an adventure. I
Yeah, I
learned a lot of things.
bet. And man, I guess for someone who likes the idea of doing everything, I'm sure that must have kind of satisfied that a little bit, right?
Yeah, 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 for sure. And I think, and then like that was the high of it, right?
Hmm.
Now well, if I want to publish my own books now I can because I learn all of these skills. But then I just had this deep dive because after that, the company unfortunately closed, at least in that the format that they had, um, and I didn't got jobs anywhere because it's really hard to pitch yourself whenever you are a multimedia artist. I think nowadays it's different, right? Because internet culture changed that a little bit. But I think in 2014, 2015, it was still, oh, but are you a graphic designer, or are you a web designer, or are you, it was hard to then, I don't know, showcase my skills, I guess. So life happened. I moved to Covilhã, which is a really small town, like 3 hours and a half, 4 hours away from Lisbon, and there was nothing there for me. But they had this university with a degree in game design and development, and I was like, I programmed children books. Like, how hard can it be to make games? I think games are great. Let's do it. And so yeah, I think that
Oh
began the path
wow.
of going there in the more with more intention, um and again, it's not as linear
Right.
as this, by the way, Jonathan, because so right after college I had a
Well, I'm
friend
sure.
telling me, yeah, I had a friend telling me things like, oh, Mafalda, I think you'd be a good game producer, and I didn't know nothing about games back then. And I went home. I read a book about producing. I made the interview with him, and it was like, oh, you know a lot. Like, you can join. Welcome to the team. And so right before
Wow.
between my internship and that, I already stepped a little bit in what that would be one day. And so that friend was the one that put me in touch with the game dev community back then. So I was already in there, but I think I was still I wasn't confident enough that I could do that. So I think going back to university was like, whenever you're a student, you feel that you have, oh no, now I'm studying this. Now I know what I'm
Mhm.
doing.
Right.
And
Yeah, I know it well. Yeah.
and yeah, so uh, and yeah, and then from that to Nerd Monkeys was I just don't know how to stop doing things. So it was just again all about communities again. I was in this
Yeah.
town. There was nothing around. How can I get my crew? How can I get my crowd?
Mhm.
I know that there's
Mhm.
a master's degree here, so there must be
Mhm.
people around that want the same things I do. So I think
Mhm.
I during the time I was there organized 5 game jams, one conference. I found out all the studios that were around. There were 4 game studios around back then, and no one knew anyone. I just like start being the change I wanted to see happen in that area, and by doing that I got noticed, and people started inviting me more and more to be in Lisbon, started to open the doors to things. I won second place in a game jam that also made me showcase my game around.
Mhm.
And eventually in 2019, I went to Gamescom, DevCon. It was the best experience ever. I love it. Recommend.
Mhm.
And yeah, Diogo took notice of it. It was like, Mafalda is a great biz dev person. I need to put it in my team. And so I didn't know about that until like a few months later. But apparently he saw something in me, I guess, and he was like, I will teach you everything I know so you can be a studio leader one day. And well, and I'm still
Wow.
learning.
Right. Wow. That's
Welcome to the
awesome.
entire life
Wow.
story.
Right. It's been a fun ride. It's been a fun ride. Yeah. Wow. That's impressive. From going in to be an illustrator on children's books to becoming basically a full interactive experience designer for children's books to then going to like reading a book about production, interviewing for a role in production, and then right, like you've. I'm really impressed at your ability to just kind of adapt to these situations, right? Like, and like, were you intimidated at all during these moments, or?
Oh, I'm always intimidated, but I think that's a Portuguese thing, you know. We had this term that is called desenrasca, or the so it's like we're all it's like it's figuring out. We're always figuring things
For
out,
sure.
and that's part of our culture, and
Mhm.
so I think a little bit is that. Another part is that I really, really, really find love and passion um and motivation and making things happen. I
Okay.
think one day I told my boyfriend when something that is like I like to make visible things that are not, things that are in the air
Uh,
and people know that th- they can speak about them, and they can know that they would like to make them exist, but they don't know
right.
how to make them into the world. And I
Right.
think whenever you're producing and whenever you are directing that, you are helping people making those ideas be out here, right? And yeah, I really really enjoy to just direct things and say, oh, try to do this, try to go this way, try. And at the end, everyone is super proud of themselves. Everyone is like, oh, we made a thing.
This episode of the Zero to Play podcast is brought to you by Prismatic Studios. Prismatic Studios is an Unreal Engine technical consultancy based in Auckland, New Zealand, focusing on development services for clients that need support prototyping, implementing and testing features, or adding development resources to existing projects. With their expertise using Unreal Engine, they can help consult and work alongside your teams to avoid common pitfalls that are so common in software and game development these days. Reach out to them today for a quote or free consultation. A link to their website can be found in the description below. Back to the show.
Lead my small indie studio of 3, and like we are not nearly the size of No More Monkeys, so I can only imagine how much more the kind of challenges go as you involve more people, as you have like more money gets involved, as employment becomes a thing, like you take on bigger projects, all that stuff. So like I guess I'd first like love to hear what do you do in like your day to day as a studio director, and
Yeah.
then Yeah, yeah. I guess let's start there. Yeah.
Well, we're s- we're s- we're still an indie studio, right? Even we just have more people because, again, client work is a thing whenever you're indie, and maybe you cannot do
Mm,
just the things that
right.
you want. So we always try to have maybe
Yeah.
a core team that are available to do like some research and development things, and then people that are doing things for our clients and managing all of that. So yeah, managing all of that's a big part. Also, just like biz deving, and so go on meetings and meet new people and say, yeah, we are the right person for you.
Right.
And another part is being visible, right? Because people don't realize that doing whatever I'm doing with you, but also, I don't know, going to schools or being a jury here or there. uh it it, it is for myself, but also for the brand, right? Because we get the recognition, so then maybe we get more people trusting that we can manage projects and make things work. So there's a lot of also, I don't know, the public perception of us, and then helping everyone around because sometimes
Mm,
even if I'm not leading a project, so for example, in the short games collection, I was the first project where I was as a studio director. I wasn't the producer of that project, so I didn't accompany every meeting, but I was always there whenever it's like, okay, no one can decide this thing, or we need, I don't know, an
mm,
artistic vision on this, or can you help out? This does this feel good or not, or like make decisions. Um, so yeah, a lot of my time is making decisions and telling
mm.
people what to do
Right.
in a focused way, right? Because it's
Right.
hard
Right. Right.
sometimes to know what to do, right? It's just like, oh,
Right.
we have all these things, so
Mhm.
and yeah, and I teach as well, and
Right.
I don't like to have free time, I guess.
It makes sense for a person who likes to do everything, right? Free time's probably the enemy. Yeah. Uh, oh man, for sure. Wow.
Yeah, I would
Wow.
say oh,
That's
sorry,
oh,
it's just,
no.
I would say like studio directing, producing, it's especially for you that you're running your own studio. I don't know if you agree, but it's like sometimes it's a little bit of the same thing, but like whenever you're directing the studio, it's a little bit less the creative part, right? That is
Right.
whatever is the bureaucracy it's going. But I think for a small
Hmm.
studio, for example, for me, production is a creative job. Like I can
Right.
have
Right.
some creative vision indications and freedoms, and put, for example, I don't know, reference forward that will change
Right.
direction. And so I think that's why I always present myself as managing director and producer, because I think producer is more on the core of what I like to do, and
Right.
directing the company is what I have to do. Yeah.
For sure. For sure. I can see that absolutely, and it's man, you've made like a lot of really good points, but really, like you mentioned, like making invisible things visible, right? And I think especially leading a studio, talking to so many people in so many different departments, so many different roles, like you said, exercising like direction and all that. It's a lot of the way I see it is almost like a spider web, and there's all these connections,
Mm,
right? And like you have to be the center and know which strings to pull when, right? Um, and so I guess with that said, right, like what are some aspects of production, especially that um so I guess I'll say before I started leading my studio, there were things I thought should happen as a programmer that I didn't
mm,
understand. A person who directs a studio has to understand and maybe sometimes kill what I'd like to do because like there's something
mm,
more important for the studio as a whole, right? And so are there
yeah.
any aspects of kind of production and direction that you feel like sometimes creative roles don't see, like they don't appreciate that like sometimes we have to make the decision that isn't the most fun or exciting, but like there's a reason for it.
Oh yeah, for sure. Oh, I have a lot of stories on that. But the thing, okay, okay, let me answer that with a little bit of context as well, which is, first of all, I know that I talked about that first experience with a friend of mine in their studio. I think I've been with
Mhm.
them. I was with them only for like 6 months. And it's that type of studio that we're just connecting a lot of like recent graduates or students or whatever together to try to make a thing. So
Right.
It was a passion project, and I did everything wrong because I didn't know. Again, I would say back then the biggest bottleneck was, first of all, I never done that. Second of all, is I didn't know enough about programming, right? So what happened is everything went great with concept art. Concept art went to the 3D artist, perfect, to the rigger, to the animators, and then we never saw it in the game. And I didn't know how to mandate. uh, I don't know how to be assertive enough to say, no, guys. It's like I want to walk with a cube around. Why don't we have this? Like I never seen a build, in
Right.
that project because I
Right.
didn't know. I always got the, oh, and then of course it's, if it's a volunteering project, it's also hard
Hmm.
to keep the programmers around, right? That's the ones that always
Right.
have jobs, and so it's hard to
Right.
keep passion.
Right.
Yeah, so the programmers would change, and then they would say, oh, I'm still reading the code from the other one, and I'm like, if I never seen anything, just start over, like it's, now I would say that, but before I didn't know.
Right.
And so
Right.
I think a lot of that failure helped me out going forward. Another thing that helped out is whenever I start producing, so I did all the things of my master except delivering the thesis. So
Mhm.
I don't have it completely, but I did the classes, right? So back
Right.
at that point, I already knew how to program a game, and I did the interactive children books, and so it was different in the sense that I knew how to communicate logic, right? And how to
Right.
think a little bit, even if I didn't know how to write or the syntax. Um, and I wasn't alone, right? So I have Diogo by my side all the time, being more experienced, and he has the company for 9 years, right? And so I can always lean in. So that's the second thing, and the third thing is, so in out of line, it was really really hard to jump in because I started in the company in a mentorship. And Diogo was mentoring me to become studio director one day. So he wanted me to do the biz
Right.
dev part and everything else. But what happened was the producer for Out of Line, Philip, he needed to leave, and Diogo was meant to be the producer. That is a great salesperson, business person, but a terrible producer. And whenever we had the first meeting, well, not a terrible. I'm exaggerating, but in the first meeting, like he was tired of the
Right.
project, right? And I
Right.
knew what needed to be done, and he didn't. And so the thing was like, okay, Mafalda, you seems like like, here, now it's your project, and it's and it was really hard to make that transition, because, well, I wasn't really onboarded in a sense or with the team, uh, but I was still with them, and so I'm really grateful for my team because they were incredible in teaching me as well what were their capabilities, what they're not. So whatever was the necessity of the project, and we collaborate a lot all the time. So we, of course, mindful of the time and mindful of not being the entire day in meetings, but also trying to be, okay, can you explain me why this cannot be like that, or what can we do to achieve this goal? And so a lot of that collaboration, a lot of that communication, I think it's really the foundations for that, for then you be able to do your job right, because
Right.
it is impossible to expect someone in this type of job to know all the aspects. For example, whenever I was working with my audio team, I never worked with an audio team before. I have no idea how to give feedback on sound and music. I listen to it and it all sounds incredible. I don't know. And like, this is magical. Now sounds are being made. Yeah, sure, guys. But yeah, but they taught me how to give feedback and how to give references and what words to use and things like that. And so um, it was really important two different times. Me telling my team I want to learn with you and I'm available, but also at some point, whenever I felt more confident as well, and whenever I knew the project vision and I knew the publisher, and we had a publisher, so I knew the publisher um, requests. I knew the project vision and I knew what we can and couldn't do, right? Because we had this time and this money and this budget. And and at that point, the thing was just to tell my team, here, guys, you need to also trust me that this is my job, and my job is to know how to make these decisions. And in the same way that sometimes you might fail, you might do a bad animation, a bad art, bad codes that looks terrible, and it's
Mhm.
okay. And then we'll figure it out, and you do it again. You need to trust me to do bad decisions, and be I will be forward, and I'll say this is my fault because I, as a producer, I put you doing the wrong task, and then we didn't meet our goal. So you need to trust me that I'll be accountable, but also you need to trust me that this is my job to make a decision, and that can be a bad decision, but it is my decision.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that how transparent, and I think that's important, right? I think that a good team is all about trust in that way, right? Like we have
Mhm.
to trust each other, not just that you'll do a good job, you'll do the best job you can, but if you screw up,
Yeah.
you'll be able to recover, right?
Yeah, I think that was really, really important because we were all tired. It was a project that went a little bit over our, well, as all games, I would say, over the scope and the time that we have, and so we need to trust each other in that point. So, for example, at some point, I just cut an entire section of the game, really, like a month before. I was something like I was just like, okay, this guys, okay, let's sit down. This just creates this types of bugs. This creates these types of issues with narrative. This type, is this helping in any way? No. Can we just turn off a button and close all of this off? Yes. Then it's done. Like, let's not think about this more. Like, this section doesn't exist. And those are scary decisions, right? Because you can be wrong, and then that would be like an important part, or like the publisher could say, oh, where is this section of the game? But we made it work. And I think that's, again, that's part of the trust. So I think you said it right. That's the word. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely, that's awesome, and yeah, I've been in those situations too, and I don't think it's never fun to hear that like something you worked
Mm,
on for months or whatever got cut, but sometimes it is the best decision, right? And the game can be better for
yeah.
Absolutely. Um, yeah, you mentioned out of loop, so I'd love to hear like could you do it? So first of all, it's gorgeous, right? Like I looked it up, it's absolutely beautiful game. I dug the music that was in the trailer, and so like I'd love to hear more about the game. Like what was it? I guess how long did you work on it? How long did it take to develop? All of that.
Yeah, so Out of Line, as a game, I think it was born somewhere in 2017 because it was a student project for our lead artist, Francisco Santos. And it was his a school passion project, right? And he won the PlayStation Talent Awards back at that time. um but it looked tremendously different, but it was a start,
Mm,
right? And then life happened, and it is a school project. It's only natural that colleagues break apart, and they were like, oh, we don't want to work on that. But um he wanted to make it happen, and so he reached out to Diogo, to Nerd Monkeys, um, to try to find a collaboration there. And so we adopted the project, we adopted him. And I know they worked a lot, like in a vertical slice, because the game didn't really have that back then. And
mhm,
into then promoting, going to publishers, and doing all of that. I entered uh, this process a little bit later on, but I had the privilege to start working with Yogu right whenever the negotiations were finished. So I was there when the deal with the publisher was first signed, and so it was all like the first thing I learned. It's just like, welcome here, welcome to my mentorship. This is what a publisher contract looks like, and I started learning that right away, and what does that those negotiations meant, was those timelines meant. And I start learning from Philippe as well, as a producer and a lot senior than me. He has a great career here, and is really important here in Portugal because of one of the our seniors um, uh, producers around. And so I'm really grateful that I got to see the way that he built the team, and he built those connections, and he structured the start of the project. And yeah, so it's really a warm project for me because it was, well, my first commercial one. And but also I think just that passion, right? Because he had those that all that preparation before, but then we signed, I think, in 2020, and it was released in 2021. So it was like a full year of production. I think, yeah, we started in January, ended in maybe in February, and then is that time to launch. Um, and and it was an adventure, especially, well, for all the things that I already said, right? It was, um, I had to learn a lot in very quickly,
Yeah.
and and yeah, I did the best I could, and I had a really really amazing team. I think all the team, they were all passionate about what they were doing, and that shows in our final project, I would say. Um, and it was really cool to also figure out that collaboration between us and the publisher, right? And having Francisco as the creative director, in the sense that it was his vision, his project, but then he trusting the team that we had at Nerd Monkeys, and we as a team changing that and building upon that vision, but then also our publisher guiding towards the players and towards the market, and saying, um, one of the changes that he brought in was changing the character, and it is a better, just changing the design of the main character, and he's a better character for it. So
Hmm.
I think there's a lot of those relationships that just makes a better
Hmm.
product. And I
That's
think you don't know that
wow.
before you live it, right? I would say, I don't know how it is,
Yeah.
if you did it only but even for normal clients, sometimes it's like they have a vision, you have a vision, and then you meet
Right.
halfway there, and you make a better thing.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I think that was one of the, like, I think college can teach you a lot of things, but I definitely think like teaching you how to be able to balance expectations and still get what you want. I
Mhm.
think that's something you can only learn when you're doing it, right? Like,
Yeah, it's really hard because, again, it's a balance. It cannot be all from one side or to the other, because you either
right.
lose the integrity of being an artistic project, and Out of Line is an artistic vision. It has that vibe. So it's like,
Mm,
on one side you need to fight for that, but also you need to pick up your battles, because there's battles that are not worth winning, because
right.
sometimes you are not thinking, having the long vision as well, because you are too deep into the project. I think
Right.
that's one of the best things that I like about not only production, but as being a studio director, is like thinking about the overall vision. So in production for the project itself, but as a studio director, what I think it's really cool is to identify, okay, yeah, this is a cool game for us to have, to release right now, because I don't know, it's a good time for our company to showcase that we can do this type of thing, or okay, now we should delay this other thing because it's not the right time, or just thinking about strategy. um
Mhm.
I again, yes, it's a creative process, right? And I think creativity in every aspect of what you're doing is, it's a must for me, at least.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I could totally see that. Wow, very cool, very cool. And then you also mentioned the short games collection, which also looked amazing. I almost bought that for my Switch. I think I still might because it looks really cool. But I'd love to hear about your work on the short games collection, and then how long it took to develop, and kind of reading about there were a lot of really interesting ideas about like the value of short games. So I'd love to hear all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the short games collection is the baby of Diogo, and what we did is, so Out of Line ended up, we then spoke again. Okay, Mafalda, you finish our first project now. You can have the studio, and I'm like, I'm not ready to have the studio. Stop doing this to me. Uh, and I really, really feel not ready. But at the same time, so while doing Out of Line, basically we were working on the short games collection throughout that time. So what had happened is, we had a little team doing port work and starting to put things together. Poor things, they needed to stop their work and jump into save Out of Line, and so we delayed it a little bit. But then the thing is, okay, we want to have this new branch. Let's have you running the studio, and I'll run the publishing side. And the publishing side, of course, it has more things than the short games collection, but the short games collection is like the main crowning jewel of why we are opening that publishing side.
Mm-hmm.
um and we both have a lot of love for the short games. So for me, it's so I didn't consider myself a gamer, even though I played games my entire life. It's just the type of games that I played was not the type of games that you see in billboards. I I
Mm-hmm.
only had access. I didn't have consoles for the longest time. I had PC games, and the PC games I had was educational games that I had in my local library. And
Mm-hmm.
uh, and some games that were in that line between being games and interactive encyclopedias or whatever. So
Right.
um but they are short, right? Because they're for kids, so they don't have like long times. And also um and so whenever I had my first Steam account in 2022, one of the first games I played in my at the time boyfriend was Loom. Loom is the first game from State of Play that they then made Luminous City that won the BAFTA. And whenever I play that game, that game is it's handmade. They made um
Mm-hmm.
all the things are physical things, the objects that you interact with, and the little house. and and that was really similar to what I saw in animation, right? It's what stop motion animation is. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that there was when I was like, okay, I could make games, you know, even though I only made that decision more forward in time. I think that was the time when I decided that I would like to make games. That was the game that made that for me. And it's a game of an hour to play. And after that, what I did is I went to Steam and I looked for all games that were handmade or that had the handmade tag. I found them in Ita Design, and I had all their games. And so whenever I found games that were handmade or they have that feel, so one of the recent ones is Poptura. Recommend to everyone. I love it. It's amazing. It's incredible. And they have in common that if they're made by hand, they cannot be too long. I think well, maybe Machinario is like an hour game, so that's not as short. But games that you can play in a day or in an afternoon. And so I had that passion already, and Diogo has that passion too. And so it was a good mix of, yeah, let's embrace this. And I collect short animation films, and I wanted to be a short animator director. And so
Mm-hmm.
of course that resonated with both of us, and we're trying to bring the things that I already see in short films. If you buy a short film, normally you don't buy one, you buy like this collection. There's like this.
Right.
And sometimes whenever you go to a short film festival, then you have like the festival top movies that you then can review and things like that. So you want to bring that a little bit of a premium experience as well, of like the very best of the animation shorts or things like that. Or sometimes they have a vibe. There's this festival here, Monstre, in Lisbon. They have the triple X animation shorts, for example. There are like animations there are kind of weird, but not for kids. Or uh, you know, but they have a theme and a way. And even if they have a theme, they're not all the same. There's 3D animation and just fluids and abstract and whatnot. And so we wanted to bring that to the short games collection. So the short games are not about having just platformers together or having all Metrovania games. It's about having a theme throughout that connects them, and you can play that experience and making that a thing. And so yeah, you only from one ROM you enter that, and you have an environment that is inviting, that is fun. You can navigate around, see the trailers, see a little bit of the description, and then enjoy them. And I think even though most of them are single player experiences and are really short, for me the short games collection is all about sharing and experimenting that little thing, because now I want to show all my friends, oh, have you played the Good Time Garden? Like, it's super fun, you like it. And then you can do that with friends, right? You can, because it's so short, you can have them home and, oh, it's just an hour, we'll play it together. It's just a
Right.
little bit. And yeah.
Oh, that's so awesome. Yeah, I could totally see that. I could totally see that. Yeah. And I think there's a really compelling case, right? For a game you could just sit down and play with friends on a Friday night, right? That sounds like a
Yeah.
blast to me.
Yeah, and again, it's, for example, if you don't like certain genres, like, I don't know if you are in any a gamer Facebook group or whatever, but
Mhm,
there's this gamer, Portuguese gamers, whatever, that I sometimes follow, and
mhm,
you will see someone say, oh, I just played this, I don't know, I played Last of Us and I really like it, can you recommend something like it? And
mhm,
so sometimes you are really closed in, I like this style of games, and
mhm.
can someone recommend this style? And I think with the short games, it's a way for you to expand your horizons as well. Like, what is another style that, oh, maybe type of gameplay is not the only thing that I like, maybe I like this art style as
Right,
well, I like this message, I like this story, I like
right,
whatever, and you will experiment
right,
it because it's all together, they're all together,
right.
yeah. And sorry, I didn't
Absolutely.
reply to how long it take, but it took a while. Not in
Oh
terms of
yeah,
making the short games collection,
for sure.
just in the sense that we picked games that were already again, just to go with this mission. We picked games that were
Right.
already made and released in PC, in itch.io, and some of them are free. You can find it somewhere else. But we wanted to bring them value in the console market and say, no,
Mhm,
no, this for us are premium, and if you want to access them in these consoles, you'll have this premium factor to it.
right.
And so they took a lot of networking, a lot of convincing, because it was the first time that we were doing it. There were people that
Mhm.
thought we were doing a scam or something. They're like, oh,
Oh
I don't see
no.
any information about the short games collection. Who are these nerd monkeys from Lisbon? So
Oh man.
there's a lot of that part, and but
Mhm,
it was a lot of fun, and it was great to then also help the devs to feel like their games matter. I think that's one of the best things for me, was just they're like, oh, but this is a game that I just did in a game jam. No, 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 but I already played it, I loved it, I want it as it is. I don't, oh, but I
mhm.
can add another hour of gameplay. No, no, you're not understanding. I like exactly how it is, that this is the time, the perfect time for it. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Wow. Very cool. Wow, that's awesome. Wow. And so I guess one thing I definitely know, there's, you mentioned earlier that you kind of, I guess you didn't consider yourself a gamer, right? Because
Mm.
I guess you mentioned you didn't have a console growing up, and so in that way, it must have been kind of challenging, maybe not feeling like you're represented as a gamer in that way. And so um, I guess my other question would be, as like a woman game developer who's done, you've done more in games than a lot of people I know in general, and so super impressive. But I guess what does it mean to you to be a woman in games, and to, I guess, as far as representation, do you feel like women in games are represented well, and is there a way you'd
Mm.
like to see women better represented?
Yeah, well, that's a tough one, right? Because I keep telling people that, especially with my path, I really differentiate between um what in what it is being a gamer, a woman in the gaming space, like as a gamer,
Right.
and seeing yourself represented in the games that you play, versus in game development. And I know in game development there's a lot of, well, we know the stories around like big companies and even indies now that are coming out, but um for me there are different issues and they have different solutions, right? Because I think for having women, well, that then overlap, right? Because if you have more women
Right.
working in games, then you have games that have more women stories, and they have more women characters, and so on and so forth. um and who says women says other types of minorities and other references there. even if it's just by your backgrounds, because then you'll have your life stories there, and you'll have your own inputs and your references, the things around you and your culture. But what I would say is, I consider myself as a gamer, because then the thing is, it was just all about that gamer culture that I don't relate to. But I play the the games that I play the most is actually League of Legends, just because it's easier to get in and out and then play for an hour. Even though my favorite games are more artsy games and more indies and short, it's just the easiest game for me to just, okay, I have 10 minutes, I'll do a TFT or whatever. But
Mhm.
but at some point it's like, oh, I played a lot. I had, I don't know if you guys have that in the US, but in here at some point we had cereal boxes that offer little demos
Oh
of
yeah.
games. And so I
Oh.
played, I thought it was full games before, I didn't have access to entire things,
Right.
so I just play them over and over again. And I played a lot of
Mhm.
browser games. I played browser Barbie games because I didn't have consoles and I didn't have access to the real ones. And I was super
Right.
jealous for everyone that had Nintendo dogs, or those type of
Right.
things. I really wanted one in my life. I
Right.
should buy one now that I'm
Mhm.
older. Um, but I really wanted that, so I looked for them, and I played the hell out of Sims. A- and not too much of mobile games, but even mobiles, like I have a problem with top games, so I cannot play. I
Mhm.
played the Top Titans one until the end. And
Okay.
and you'll ask me, Falda, is there an end to mobile games? Aren't they just endless? Well, I will tell you, my friend. Top Titans has an ending. I unlocked all the I unlocked all the things.
Wow.
So, and whenever you put that into perspective, it's really hard what it means. I think just the way we talked about gaming culture back then is not the reality of our days. It's not
Right.
real to think about hardcore gamers, as gamers that only play World of Warcraft. I played World of Warcraft,
Mhm.
and I was a lot more
Right.
hardcore playing Top Titans than playing. I
Right.
played World of Warcraft really casually, I just went in, went out,
Mhm.
whatever. And the other one, I played all the
Mhm.
days,
Mhm.
or Farmville. That made me
Mhm.
be there and on
All
time. They
right.
had a schedule, and so so I think it's just the approach and the perspective and what it means to be a gamer and what are the games that matter. And I would say a lot. So in my work now, especially being an ambassador for Women in Games first and foremost, before I'm the coordinator as well, is whenever I go to schools, I try to pass on that message that it's like, well, just have your reference everywhere. Is all about what you know, and valuing those games, because I hated whenever I was in school. And again, I used World of Warcraft as an example because for game game balancing, something like that, I had a course that was on game balancing, and we picked that game. And for me, it's like,
Mhm.
really? It's like, wouldn't it be better to play, I don't know, just a browser mini clip game, or something that was
Yeah.
really accessible, or like a mobile game, and then go around and then give comments and references on how to balance this game. First of all, it would be a lot easier because it has less story, and one exists for 10 years and maybe the other was shorter. It
Mhm.
would be, it would make more sense. And there are a lot of things, but it's, of course, because that's what the teachers knew, and that's
Right.
what there are, because they're older, whiter men, and that's what they
Mhm.
played.
Right.
And if you had more the diversity, and who is putting these plans together, who is talking about those games, then you also learn more, because then your references are not all coming from the same place. Um, Now you're taking things from here, from here, from there. And again, talking just about references don't come just from games, from artworks, from movies, from all the other things that you can be inspired. You know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. Uh, those are all excellent points, and I totally get it. And yeah, I applaud you for just your work, and it sounds like you really have a passion just for bringing people together, for bringing ideas together, for bringing processes together. Like you're a real glue person, and I think that's
Oh,
really impressive that you could bring so much together. I think that's a real testament to your passion and your skill, right?
yeah, thank you, Jonathan. I think I don't like to compliment, but because I feel always weird about it. Because I think, just in the sense that I think a lot of what I do is speaking about the things that I love, you know, and then people around me are the ones doing the hard work, you know, like the people around me are the ones that they are doing the coding and they are doing the art and they are doing whatever, and I'm here, you know, having building up references and reading about things and playing games and and so sometimes I feel sometimes I feel unworthy of the position I'm in, and especially being an advocate, you know, and one thing that tried that changed that a little bit for me was whenever I was really shy about speaking in public and doing things like we're doing today, um and applying for women in games. A friend of mine told me, "Yeah, Mafalda, but you are really outgoing, and you speak a lot, but you can speak well about the things that you love, and so um, that is the skill on of itself, and and using that can open doors to other people and promote that, and I think that is when I stepped out of that comfort zone and said, um, and be less afraid of being visible. Uh, because then I thought, oh, but if I'm visible, I'm not just promoting myself in a way, or you know, or trying to look more than what I am, and I really didn't like that idea. Um, but now that some time has passed, I see how, for example, I was the first Portuguese woman in games ambassador, but now if you go to the website, I think there's like two or three more, and so this is fun. And now there's more people
Yeah.
speaking about it, and we have more power in terms of reaching out to our community. Because before, let me tell you, you you could be speaking about the same things, but no one will hear you, and then whenever I become a woman in games ambassador, they're like, oh, this is an international thing now that we have this Portuguese woman in. Let's give her a platform and inviting me to all the things, and to television and to
Mhm.
podcasts and the thing. So then I saw that, yeah, again, just it all went back to community, right? It's then you
Right.
are lifting all the boats together, because now people pay more
Mhm.
attention and now people are more respectful and now they hear you more, but also they hear everyone that are with you. Uh, yeah.
Right. Ah, that's awesome, man. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you, Mafalda. I've learned a ton about directing, producing, leadership, building community, talking to publishers, stuff I didn't know before. And so, thank you very much for educating all of us. And so, with that said, like, where can we follow you and your work and your studio's work? Like, where can we see more and hear more from you and your studio?
Yeah, so if you want to follow me, it's somewhat Mary. It's my nickname all around. In Twitter mostly. I think that's the one that I try to be more active now. But also Instagram. And for our studio, look for Nerd Monkeys. I think you'll find us. It's Nerd Monkeys altogether, or Nerd underscore Monkeys, one of the two. And yeah, and now, well, if you want to follow the Portuguese game dev community, or for example, if you are now in Lisbon and you want to connect and know the events, follow and stay tuned. There would be a new we'll do a meetup next week, and 27th of May, so you know, we keep being active, keep being together.
Awesome. Very cool. Very cool. Well, yeah, thank you so much, Mafalda, for joining me. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the podcast, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Zero to Play podcast. We hope you learned something about game development, the games industry as a whole, or the future of games. Follow us on Twitter at Zero to Play and let us know what you found valuable. Take care and see you in the next episode.